My name is Jephthah Idahosa Aigbe, and I'm about to share 1,000,001 words with Moa. Enjoy.
Living in a fast-paced world with over 8 billion people, it is very easy to be overlooked, undermined, trampled on, and pushed aside. So I hope that this podcast reminds you that you are one in a million. I'm Moami and I'm passionate about helping you feel seen. Hello and welcome to another beautiful episode of the Million and One podcast. As always, I'm your host, Moami. And on today's episode, I have with me a very special guest. And in the spirit of helping you feel seen, because that's like one of the goals of the podcast, one of the aims of the podcast. I have a very special guest, like I mentioned, and I feel like I'm freaking out. But either ways, I'll just let you introduce yourself. So you have the floor.
All right, hello everyone. My name is Jephthah Idahosa Aigbe,
Yay!
and I'm glad to be here
On the podcast with me.
on the
All right.
podcast with Moa.
Yeah. So, introduce yourself like properly. Who are you? What do you
Okay.
do?
Well, first of all, I'm a believer,
All right.
and a lot of people know me as a musician, as a gospel artist.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a singer, I'm a songwriter, a worship leader. Um, I'm also an architect. I studied architecture in the university. I'm currently studying for my master's in architecture, about rounding that up. And I play a few instruments. I do a little production, among other things.
A little production. Wow, that sounds very humble, but then it's
Yeah,
amazing. It's
so
amazing.
that's me.
I'm glad. I don't know if I've said you, but I'm actually grateful that you decided to honor my invitation to be on the podcast.
The
Thank you
pleasure
very
is mine.
much. And
Okay.
yeah, so I said we're going to be talking about helping yourself feel seen. I know I've said it a couple of times, but one of the reasons why I decided to have you on the podcast was because I am particularly interested in your story. This podcast, I said I actually am particularly interested in your story. For those of you who do not know him, he comes off as someone who is just very quiet. You know, when you guys can be in the bus together and then you guys will now reach the events that you are going to, and the person goes on stage and like, it's not the guy I was just with, and then he just kind of he just does his thing. So yeah, what is your story? What was growing up like for you? Was it always music and all of that?
Okay. Um, I was born in Zaria.
Okay.
I grew up in Zaria. I've basically spent my life in
Mm-hmm.
Zaria. Basically, I've done a lot of traveling, but I've never lived outside of Zaria since I was born. Um, my parents, my dad is late now, but he was from Benin, Edo State. So I'm Benin by tribe.
That's
From my
amazing.
name Idahosa, I know that is quite obvious. And by the way, Idahosa is my name. A lot of people listening to this, some people might have that question. I've gotten question a lot of times. Are you related to Bensi Idahosa? Are you his son? I am not related to him.
So it's like a community name.
No, it's not a
Maybe you guys are
community
from the
name.
same village.
Um, well, from Benin.
All right.
Yeah, so that's a Benin name. It's an Edo name.
Oh yeah,
Idahosa, right? Yes. Although
actually.
there are those who have the family name,
So I thought
but
it was like a family name.
yes, there's a family name. There are those who
Idahosa.
belong to the Idahosa family,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't belong to that family. My parents named me Idahosa.
So Idahosa is your first name.
It's my middle name.
What's your first
My
name?
first name is Jephthah.
So your surname is actually Aigbe.
Yes.
Wow. Okay. Amazing. My mom is actually from Edo too,
Oh,
and I
that's really
have an
cool.
Edo name ish, kind of. So
It's not related to any of my names, is
no,
it?
no, 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 no. It's actually Esio here. That's my Edo name.
Okay, okay, that's lovely. Edo people have really lovely names generally.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Okay, so yeah, my mom is Igbo by tribe. I have an Igbo name.
Chinedu. In case
I was not going to say
I'm
that,
so sorry.
but I have an Igbo name. So yes, that's my background. They met in university. My parents they met in
Wow.
Uniben, University of Benin, and then after school they moved down to Zaria. My mom moved here first. She served here in Kaduna in ABU, and she got a job.
Mm-hmm.
Then my dad came and joined her.
Wow.
They had started the whole thing from school, so he
Mm.
came and continued and got married, and that was how we settled in Zaria and grew in Zaria and all that. So growing up was I grew up in a very churchy setting, and put it that way, because my parents were both not musical. I was about to say music ministers. They were both children ministers.
Oh, wow.
Right? They were Sunday school teachers, so they were very deliberate about the whole train up the child in
In
the
the
way
way
you
you
should
should
go kind
go.
of thing,
So you're like a
right?
church boy.
Yeah, very much. So
Wow.
we were in church every week, morning devotion. Apart from doing morning devotions,
Mm-hmm.
which is a culture in the family, my parents would take it on, especially my dad back then, to come and make sure you wake up before family devotion to do your own devotion.
Wow.
Wake you up like 5 a.m. And you wake up, you do your, so all of those kinds of upbringing. And we didn't have satellite TV in our house
Mm-hmm.
for the most part of my childhood, because they just felt we didn't need it. So we had Mount movies,
No.
we had children, all these Christian gospel
Mm-hmm.
CDs, songs, Donut Man, Salty, all those things. We had a lot of them. We knew all the songs by heart. So that background, that growing up as a child in a very Christian home, where it was just the values of the kingdom that were being taught, Bible stories. I got so conversant with those things right from when I was a kid. And I had a little extra that um, a lot of Christian children did not have,
Okay.
because a lot of Christian children who were born into Christian homes would have the whole setting of morning devotion and all those
Yeah.
things. But when I was, I think from primary 1 or 2,
Mm-hmm.
there's this ministry, Children Evangelism Ministry, CEM. It's national. It's kind of an international ministry, really, but it's the headquarters is in Nigeria, in Ilorin. And my parents were part of the ministry. My primary school, the primary school where I first attended, was actually under the ministry, Total Child Bible School in Samaru. And they used to have this yearly competition, Bible competition, that they
Mm-hmm.
organized for children from primary school into secondary school. I participated in that competition from when I was either in primary 2, primary 1 or 2, till I was in senior secondary school.
Wow.
And the idea of the competition was that there will be 2 books of the Bible that will be selected. We used to call it quiz and recitation. So one of the books will be for recitation. You memorize the chapters. You go and you just
Wow.
say the chapters. How well you can memorize it, I don't go into the details, but that's what we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other is for quiz. So you are quizzed on details.
Of the
Ask you who
Bible.
was the son of this one. All those places where there are
Yes.
genealogies. You know the son of this one. All those things. So what it did to me was, and I always, there were those of us who, like, we specialize in some things. So
Mm-hmm.
there were those who were specialists in answering the questions, the quiz questions, and some were specialists in reciting, memorizing the verses. I
So
was
which one were
more,
you like a specialist
yeah, I
in?
was a specialist in the memorization. So
Wow.
I did a lot of, those were not memory verses, they were memory chapters.
Ah, memory books. Can't you? Wow.
Literally. So there's some books like the Book of Revelation. I memorized everything. I was to memorize 21 chapters out of
Mm-hmm.
22, but I memorized the 21 and I read the 22nd chapter so many times I could almost say it by
Almost
heart. And there were quite a number of books also. Like I said, I did it from primary 2 till
to
senior
SS2.
secondary school. So there were quite a number of books also that I did it. And so what it did to me is that the Word of God entered inside me,
Almost.
because to memorize a chapter, it was the culture I was doing then was I'll come back from school, and then I just knew that because every child has this competitive thing in them, to.
Exactly.
So that was what was
Exactly.
pushing me. It wasn't love for the Word of God at all. I was wanting to beat those guys that were
Mm-hmm.
going to meet. And I'll get back home, and 1 hour every day I was with my Bible, memorizing, going, just repeating the verses over and over again. 1 hour at least, some days more than that. It did something to me. I didn't know what it was doing to me, but it did something to me. Now I can look back and be like, wow, okay. It was like changing my, let's say, my spiritual DNA.
Mm-hmm.
Something was happening inside of me. So what it did to me by the time I entered secondary school, um, from GS2 was when I had what I would call personal encounter with God, where my pursuit of God was no longer about my parents or my church or anything. It was me. I want to know this God. I want to
That was in SS2,
know GS2.
JS2. Wow.
Yes, junior secondary school too. So and around that period, God connected me with some friends in JS2. When I think of it, um, it's amazing to me now. It's so interesting how it happened because we thought it was normal, but when we left school, looking back, we realized how, in quote, abnormal we were because we were so hungry for God. Secondary school, we would spend hours praying together. We'll find every little opportunity we could get. The opportunities when maybe they say there's no school today,
Mm-hmm.
and then others will run to the field to play ball or run to hang out in their houses and all that. We'll find one corner and either pray or study scriptures. Not just study, it's not like we brought Bible and say, right, let's study it. We were just talking and be like, this is this, and things were adding up to each other. And it was a major part of my spiritual growth. And around that season also, God just did it in such a way we got access also to what I would call uncommon mentorship.
Okay.
Um, I had very direct access in that season with Apostle Joshua Selman.
Mm.
He used to stay in Area E, not too far from here, where
Yeah.
we're doing this stuff. Yeah. So I just used to walk to his house and sit with him in his room
Mm-hmm.
and we'll talk sometimes for hours. He would just be talking to me. And it was I think what really attracted him, then I didn't know, but now I can, was
Retrospect.
seeing a very young boy, seeing young children being so passionate about God. It was for us, it was no longer just about the memory verses on the school kind of thing. We were asking deep, in quote, deep questions. We'll
Mm-hmm.
call to him and say, Apostle, can you teach us about God's principles for success or the principles of leadership? Those are the kind of questions we we're asking him
Mm-hmm.
in secondary school. So I know because sometimes you can judge the quality of someone's hunger by the kind of questions they ask,
Yeah.
right? So if a young child comes to ask me such questions today, it will catch my attention. Like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, what's this guy eating? What's making him think this
Mm-hmm.
way already? So he really gave us his time. And um, Pastor Chintok also.
Mm-hmm.
That wasn't my relationship on a close level with him did not start then, but that
Mm-hmm.
was when my relationship with him started because he came to minister in our school. I think I was in either GS3 or SS1 then. That was when we first met and he knew me and picked interest in us also because we were really burning and on fire for God. So that was the core foundation of my upbringing. I don't know if I should just keep speaking into how it links to the music
All
because
right.
you
Go
you
ahead. Go
asked me
ahead.
about, yeah. So that was how it started. How did it move into the music? It's all connected. Um I never saw myself as a musician during all these years.
Mm-hmm.
The highest I was doing in music was I was in the children's choir, part of being a
Right.
church boy. So I joined the children's choir. I remember when I was pretty young. I think sometimes when you look back and you begin to connect the lines, that's when you can see God's hand in everything that did not seem connected before.
Mm-hmm.
Because I know I was just about 8, 9, or 10 when I first, began to pick interest in music. Music always fascinated me. I thought it was the same for everyone. I don't know if it's the same for everyone, but music fascinated me not in terms of hearing songs, but seeing someone playing an instrument. I would look at the person in wonder, like, how this person is operating on a different level of
Mm-hmm.
existence. I remember in our children's choir back then, there was a time when we were rehearsing, and our choir mistress invited one uncle. We call them uncles. He was in the university then
Mm-hmm.
to come and help us play songs that we can sing along. And I think it was a song by Don Wen, and he was playing the keyboard, and I was just
Oh.
in awe, like how and you go and look at the keyboard to see if there's any code to show you what to play, and you think maybe if you just touch it to
It's
make the
just
same
how, yeah.
sound. It's not. So how are you guys doing this thing? It was even more with the guitar. I would look at the guitar and I'm like, how are these guys able to create
Mm-hmm.
this sound? It was very intriguing to me. It started from that intrigue. First, I was in the children's choir. We were just learning songs generally, and then I began to just be intrigued by the music. Then I remember around I was either 10 years or 9 or so when some a group of people came to teach musical instruments to the children in our church
Mm-hmm.
in the Chapel of Redemption then. And my parents said, "All right, let's go and learn since we're interested." And they were to choose instruments. So interestingly, I chose. Can you guess which instruments I chose?
I think either the keyboard or the guitar. I think it's the guitar.
Wrong. I chose the drums.
Oh wow!
That was the
Why?
first instrument I learned, which I can't play now.
Oh my god!
I don't know why, but I just think drummers looked cool to me,
There's
and
this air that they come with. I don't
yeah,
know.
it,
It's
it
like
just looks really cool. So, so I chose the drums. My elder brother
mm-hmm.
chose the keyboard. So we started learning. I was learning the drums. There were a few of us. They put us in classes. Those for
Mm-hmm.
drums would go for their class. Right? So and I was young. Like I said, I was like 9, 10. There were teenagers, the bigger
Yeah.
children. So naturally, the bigger children kind of bullied us out of the
Uh
instrument
oh.
because we didn't have instruments. The people advised our parents to buy instruments, but
Buying a
very few
drum
people buy
set.
drums. Yeah.
Actually.
So and for the we could only play when we came to church. Back then, the children's church had like a set of instruments. But whenever we came, the bigger children were playing it. They used to keep it in teenage class,
Mm-hmm.
the drums. So they're always playing, you will not find time to play. So it was
I
just
get.
frustrating. But then my parents bought my brother a keyboard. So my brother learned 2 songs. I can still remember because those were also the first song I basically learned. I learned it from him. He learned, "Oh Lord, my God, how excellent is
Mm-hmm.
your name." And then, "Oh, and the saints go." So he would just be playing. I was just looking at him like,
Like
this thing is
one
so
Badu.
sweet. So, and I learned it from him. Like, can you show me how you're doing it?
Mm-hmm.
And he showed me. And he was, in quote, my first keyboard teacher. Now he can't play.
Wow.
I'm the one that plays it. You can see it, my keyboard there, my
Mm-hmm.
guitar. I'm the musician in the house now. So, but that was how it started. And I just picked that intro. I began to just explore more, playing just random
Mm-hmm.
things on his keyboard and I was just doing it just out of that curiosity
Mm-hmm.
and um, affinity for music. So I didn't become serious with the music until I was in SS1,
Right.
and it's connected with my whole secondary school experience
Experience.
because I became very committed in the FCS, the
Mm-hmm.
fellowship, and we used to use the keyboard for our worship sessions, our prayer sessions, even teaching sessions
Mm-hmm.
because we were learning from Koinonia. So any small thing,
Actually.
keyboard, create an atmosphere, blah blah. So there was the guy that was playing the keyboard was in SS3. So by the time I was in SS1 was when it just clicked that hey, this guy is going to graduate soon and
And you
nobody's
guys
going
will
to
be
be
left
playing
without
the
a
keyboard.
keyboardist.
So I knew I could play a little, but I
Mm-hmm.
knew I could not really play.
So
I
you
had not
had to
learned.
learn and
Yes.
be
So I
diligent.
went to find someone to teach me. His name is Ikena Obona. He used to live in this area. He was the personal keyboardist of Apostle Selma at the
All
point
right.
back then. He used to play in Koinonia. So I met him and I told him, can I learn how to play the keyboard? And he said, okay, you have to buy a keyboard
Mm-hmm.
first. I still had that my brother's keyboard, but according to him, that keyboard was a toy. He
Oh
couldn't
wow.
teach me, so I had to go and pressure my parents to buy me a keyboard. This was 2013.
Mm.
Bought me a new keyboard. I started the lesson. So that's how my keyboard. I started my journey in music as a keyboardist, consciously as a keyboardist, and primary motivation was so that I could play for the fellowship
Mm-hmm.
whenever they had the need. So that's how that started. I used to sing, but not necessarily as a singer. I just sang like everybody else.
All
Like
right.
I didn't see myself as a singer, anything. But I was passionate about it. And because of my love and passion for God, I began to spend time in worship alone. So I remember back then, I used to think it was rehearsals. I used to see it as rehearsals also
Mm-hmm.
because I'm rehearsing the songs. But I'll just stay and be playing some songs and I'll cry and I'll just, you know, break out
Oh
in
yeah.
prayer, break out in just worshiping God 1, 2 hours on my own. many times I'll feel the weight of the anointing alone in the room. It just comes strongly on me. Sometimes back then, you feel physical sensations in your hands,
Mm.
on your head, and all those things. Those were the seasons we're really into just experiencing everything we could
Mm-hmm.
experience. And I feel that was the training of um it was like David in the wilderness, right? Because I believe most of the Psalms David wrote, he didn't write it because he felt he had an audience.
Yeah.
It was just him and God at that point. So his heart came to a point where he learned to just sing to God, and I think that was the training in that season for me. So I learned the beauty of the audience of one, and put it that way, before I learned anything about the
Performing
stage or the
before people.
platform or the people. I wasn't even in the band in my church because I didn't join. They were calling me to join at a point. I told them I will not join until I finish my work, my job,
Mm.
everything. I was trying to run away from them. But then all I knew then was the audience of one. So I knew that sweet moment of worship where it just pours out. So I remember back then in our fellowship, one of the first manifestations of this aspect of my life in
Yeah.
terms of music was we used to have different weeks. We say Bible study week, prayer week,
Children's
worship
week.
week, all those things. So we had worship week, and I remember one of those days they gave me to lead,
Mm.
and I I went up with my keyboard. That day fellowship was unusually full. I think over 100 people, 200 or so were around, and I began to sing. I was playing the keyboard and singing. And I was just lost in the worship because me, I was just doing what I'd
You
been doing
usually do.
inside. And I opened my eyes. I saw people, some were on their knees, some were with their hands lifted. People were just lost in worship. I was like, oh, wow, okay. Eh, like, it wasn't as though I knew it wasn't about the skill. Like to say I was in all the reefs and the runs. I didn't
Mm-hmm.
even know how to do all those things. But that heart that just compels people to connect and, just see God beyond the person leading. So it taught me a great lesson then. So, but that was then. And then I now moved on to, am I speaking too long?
No, go ahead.
Okay. So I now moved on to the university. By the way, in secondary school, I was known more as a teacher of the word.
Really?
Yes. My guys knew me more as that, and it's connected with what I shared with you, about
Okay.
my background in the
Yeah.
word. Because by the time I began to press more into God, when I began to speak, I didn't have to search. I didn't have to prepare for a sermon. I didn't have to search for scriptures. They were just there. So I could be, they'll give me maybe as an ESCO, you're talking on this topic, and I'll just go to stand and teach, and
Like an overflow of
everything, yeah,
everything
it
you
just
already
begins to
had.
pour out. So my
That's so
guys began to
beautiful.
call me rabbi
Oh,
in
wow.
school.
You look like
It
a
was
rabbi, actually.
it was that serious. So I really had no intentions. Even if I felt God was going to call me to
Mm-hmm.
ministry, I didn't think it would have to do with music at all. I just felt music was a hobby for me.
Mm.
So I, I, I finished from secondary school with that in mind. I entered into the university. I entered university 2015. I joined the music team in my church.
Mm-hmm.
Shortly after I entered, I didn't plan to join, by the way. Like I told you before we started the podcast, I was planning to run away from my church
Mm-hmm.
somehow. But then I remember one day I was just we're in the house here, and my mom, who is still very church godly woman, she
Okay, when
just
you're done, I have a quick question for you, but then
okay,
just go ahead.
okay, okay. I'm still on one question,
No, no,
but I,
come
I
on.
believe I'm answering a lot of questions
Yes,
inside
yeah,
the
you're
right. So
answering a lot of
okay.
a lot of questions. That's so beautiful.
So my mom came into we lie down in the room. I and my elder brother, and she was like,
Mm-hmm.
"What are you guys doing here?" I'm like, "We're in our house." Every day here. So is there no band rehearsal? I people not supposed to be serving in God's house. We
Wow.
go to church. Let me not see people lie now when it's time for rehearsals. Because I was supposed to have joined the band, but I was not
Mm-hmm.
going for rehearsals. So I just joined for say, oh yeah, you joined.
Mm-hmm.
So I finally, since she drove us out of our house to church, we went for the rehearsal. That's how I started going for the rehearsals. I was just playing the keyboard. I was not even singing. It was just once, I think, that the music director then, just in rehearsals, was like,
Mm-hmm.
come and sing. Just sing a lineup of 20 songs,
Mm-hmm.
shotgun. And I did it. And they were all impressed, like, oh, this keyboardist can sing.
Mm-hmm.
Or at least he tried. That was really it. I really didn't do anything else. So what surprised me the most was that music director then. His name was Jude Edger. He's Dr. Jude Edger now. He's in the UK. So around that period, he was about to leave for the UK. I
Mm-hmm.
think he was aware that he was going to leave, so he was going to hand over to the next music director. So we're all there. The way our band works is an election, not just a selection. So they nominate people
Mm-hmm.
and then they elect who will be the
The
next
music
leader and all
director.
that. So I was
And you
present for
weren't
the
so
rehearsal.
consistent then.
No, I was very consistent.
Okay, at this time you had
Yes, yeah,
okay.
I had already chosen to be committed, but I was consistent as a keyboardist,
Not as a
not anything else. I
okay, I
wasn't a
understand.
major. To me, I was not a major player in the
Mm-hmm.
band. I was just a keyboardist. I was committed and I'd committed myself to be excellent at what I was doing. So, but then it was time to nominate, and one of the MD that handed over to the MD who was to
Mm-hmm.
hand over, yes, was the one who stood up and said, "I nominate Jephthah for the." I was just like, "Is this guy serious? This guy is not serious. I bet let someone else nominate."
Mm-hmm.
That's how nobody said anything. So for me, they didn't even elect me. It was
Amazing.
it was that nobody, there was no other person to
Mm-hmm.
to elect between. So since I was the only one nominated, so now you are the. I was like, no, I was trying to. They're like, no, in God's house, you gotta give you responsibility. You know that.
Oh
So
my god.
I just accepted it, and I believe because part of the training I had in secondary school, I
Mm-hmm.
served as an ESCO in the fellowship for about 4 years, from GS3 to
Mm-hmm.
SS3, and we took it seriously. We took it like it was a ministry, like a worldwide global ministry. That's the way we're taking our work. That's
Mm-hmm.
what was driving us to, ask Apostle Simon those
Questions.
questions. Can you teach us about leadership? How do you handle
I
people? We were
understand.
really taking it seriously. I didn't know God was preparing us for more that was coming. So I could understand that one of the things I studied leadership a lot back then, and John Maxwell was one of the main people I studied,
Mm-hmm.
and he would teach the law of the lead, what he calls the law of the lead, one of the 21 laws of leadership,
Leadership.
where he mentions that no organization can rise above its leadership.
Mm-hmm.
So the leadership is the lead of
Very
the
true.
growth of the organization. And as at 2016, I didn't see myself as that much of a music person, so that I felt like being made the music director of this band. By the way, my church is the chapel, it, but for the sake of those listening,
Mm-hmm.
the Chapel of Redemption, the Protestant chapel of Ahmadu Bello University, Zaria. During school sessions, when the church is full, it probably has over 2,000 people attending services every
Mm-hmm.
Sunday. There was no way I was going to be the reason why the band was now going to begin to give terrible music
I
to the
understand.
people. So I took it as a challenge. Since I could not run away from it, I had to run into it.
Mm.
And I told myself I'm going to become excellent at this music thing. That was my primary motivation. I said I'm going to learn music to the point, not just learning it for myself now, but learning it so that I can teach people. Because now, before now, there's something about instrumentalists. They will tell you if a keyboardist listens to a song, he's most
Mm-hmm.
likely hearing just the keyboard mainly. If a bass guitarist listens to a song, he will most likely hear the bass. That's why many times if you ask them what's the lyrics of the song, they can't
Did
really tell you
well.
because they're scoring their instrument.
Mm-hmm.
So as a keyboardist in the band, then I used to just listen to my instrument because I needed to make sure I play what I needed to play. But now, as the music director, I have to hear everybody. I have to hear the sopranos, the altos, the tenors, the lead, the drums,
Mm-hmm.
know what everyone is supposed to do, how they should do it, and lead them to do it well. So I put myself under pressure and told myself, you have to learn this thing, you have to be excellent at it. So I took courses, I paid for certain trainings. I was on the internet, YouTube, watching videos, voice training, how to do this, how to do that, how to understand this. I was just frantically searching for knowledge and understanding to grow in that aspect. And it began to show I was growing. But I didn't know also that God was setting me up also for what He wanted to do.
Mm.
Because before then, I didn't see myself as a musician. So if God had now told me, go and do this, and I didn't have what I would have been like Moses, like, nah, like,
Mm-hmm.
wrong address, go somewhere else. So this was 2016
All
when
right.
I was made the MD,
Mm-hmm.
and I went on that journey to build
And you're
musically.
still the MD up till now.
No, no, no. I handed over. I served for 5 years. I handed over in 2021
Oh wow.
to the new MD. So 2017. Back then, from secondary school, I and my friends then were still in Zaria. Most of them were in ABU here. Now everybody has dispersed, but then we're still around. So there was this thing we used to do at the beginning of every year. We would meet and pray together into the year, apart from church prayer, just us as friends. So I remember that particular year we went somewhere in close to GRA, and one of us has a house there, so we went there, and then we went to those mountains, those hills that are
Yeah,
around
I,
there.
I
We
know
went
that.
to
Yes.
pray. By the way, that was where Spirit of Victory came.
All
That was the
right.
atmosphere where it
All
came.
right.
So, and we prayed and we prayed and we prayed. That was part one. That was 2016 December.
Mm-hmm.
We're praying into 2017. Then we now later we now said, okay, at the beginning of January we will meet again and
Mm-hmm.
pray. And we met somewhere in area E. One of us also had a place. He was staying in a BQ in area E, and we prayed. And while we were praying, one of my friends, by the Spirit, because those experiences became common with us,
Mm-hmm.
right? Someone will just look at you and say, God is telling me this about you. I'm seeing this, I'm seeing that. Prophecy,
Mm-hmm.
prophetic words, word of knowledge, all those
Just
things
come.
began to show up as we were pressing deeper and deeper. So this guy just looked at me and was like, Jeff, God is telling me that beginning from this year, he's going to begin to use you as a psalmist in the body of Christ to give songs to the body of Christ. That'll be a blessing to the body of Christ, spark revival, call people to worship, and all of that. And I was like, wow. Right. Um, and by the way, that's that day. Like I said, we had the meeting in December
Mm-hmm.
where, as we were praying, the same guy, was the one who said, God is telling me that he wants to give people new songs, new sound. And he said, just be sensitive. Let's just stay still and be
Mm-hmm.
sensitive. And a sound is coming. Blah, blah,
I,
blah.
I, I know that.
And so we just began to pray, sing. You are singing the spirit here and there, here and
Mm-hmm.
there. I remember I started singing one particular song which I had, because I told them, after we were quiet for a long time, I was like, "Guy, it's like nothing is really coming up." But there's this song I heard it just came to my spirit like
Yeah.
some time ago, so I began to sing it.
Mm-hmm.
And we started singing that one when we now began to pray, 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 and we were now praying about, one of us gave a prophecy that there was a revival that was coming and all that. And the whole idea of revival had just been on our minds for a
Mm-hmm.
season. We have been praying about it, thinking about it, speaking about it. And I just began to sing, blow, blow. That was where it came out from.
Mm-hmm.
That desire to see God move, to see the wind of the Spirit blow across the nations. That was where we're praying, and it just began to come out. And as I was saying the blow, blow, they began to catch, and they
Yeah.
began to sing it. That's how we began to sing it. I think we sang it for over an hour. We were just repeating just that line, blow like a mighty wind, spirit of victory, cover us with your wings. It sounded very scattered to me then, but we sang it, and that was how it came. So I don't know if that was why or if that was just a sign, but then by January he now gave me that word to begin to release these
Songs.
songs, because God knows I would not have released it.
Mm-hmm.
I would have just kept it. It would have just been one of our, because it wasn't the first time it was happening that we'll be praying and maybe a song
Songs
just
will
comes
come.
out. Yes, it has just been one of those experiences. So, but when he said that, I think after we prayed, after the prayer, everything, he came and met me. I was like, I think you should take this thing seriously. This word that God is speaking to you. Okay. So I reached out. I didn't know anything about how to be an artist,
Mm-hmm.
which is something a lot of people don't understand. That being an artist is a whole different ball game from
From
just being
being
a
a
worship
minister.
leader
Yeah.
and singing in church. It's different. I had no idea what it meant to be an artist, how to do it right, and worse still, I didn't really have references. So, like I said, back then I had access to Apostle Selman,
Mm-hmm.
and he was for me an embodiment of wisdom for me back then. So when I had issues that I felt I couldn't handle, I couldn't really understand what to do, I would
Mm-hmm.
go over to his place. And so I went to him. I said, Daddy, this is what
What's happening?
God is saying, no, and what I feel I'm being led to do. What
Mm-hmm.
should I do about it? And he said, okay. He began to talk to me and shared some things with me about how you mentioned something while we were discussing, just before we started, how
Mm-hmm.
that to think, not to think in the conventional Zaria way as a
Mm-hmm.
Zaria person and all that. Because obviously anyone who knows me and has followed my work will know I'm not doing anything I'm doing as a Zaria person. I
Yeah.
am in Zaria, but I'm not of Zaria.
Oh,
Right. I
wow.
think it was from that conversation
Mm-hmm.
because he let me know that if you're going to stand out in this, then you have to study those who are the best. Go for knowledge, invest in knowledge, expose your mind, learn from the best, find those who are doing exceptionally well in your industry,
Mm-hmm.
in the ministry. He said two things: the industry
And the
and the
ministry.
ministry.
Very important.
So you're not just limiting your learning to the ministry,
Mm-hmm.
even the industry also. You check what they're doing, learn it, understand it, and then go for excellence. Find mentors, people who you can learn from online, and if you can find those around who you can learn from, so all those things he shared with me, and he recommended that I meet with. He recommended two people back then, Minister David Dam
Mm-hmm.
and the late MD
Mm-hmm.
Mike back then. So because they were good with music, they were not necessarily excellent artists, like recording
Okay.
artists. Because as at that time, even David Dam, I think he recorded his first song that year, Hail
Oh.
Yahweh. I remember it was one of the reasons why I went to meet him because I heard the song. Like, this sounds nice. At least I've seen
Mm-hmm.
this person in real life. Let me go and meet him. I'm like, how did you
Amazing.
do it?
Yeah.
Right? So I remember I went to meet David Dam
Mm-hmm.
in his house. Then they were staying in they call it Green Gate
Mm-hmm.
in that Daraka area, and we sat down, we talked to him, he gave me some insights and all that, and then encouraged me to sign up for his school. He was running a school then, EVTS, Exceptional Voice Training School. So you can sign up, we'll teach a lot of these things. So I signed up, I paid the school fees, signed up, and he recommended a producer to me, I think he was his friend, who was one that produced the
His
Hail
own
Yahweh.
song.
So
Yeah.
that was the person I reached out to. So you see, I was really clueless about a lot of things. I was just following the advice from, thank God, the people who gave me advice were
Hmm.
sound
I
minded
guess.
people. So that was how the music started. And with that same mindset of commitment to excellence, I just kept doing the same thing, learning, growing, and becoming.
Wow. That's really beautiful. That was a lot. And I'm really glad that you really opened up to share. But I want us to take a step back to because you mentioned that you're a student of Ahmadu Bello University, and I think you mentioned that you studied architecture. And sometimes I'm like, why did you choose to study architecture?
Good question. Okay, let me take this step back
Okay,
even
all
more.
right,
I think one of the things God gave me is, let me say, a sound mind.
all right.
Uh, Personally, I feel it was also by influence of that training of staying with the word and memorizing the word. That's where it trains your mind. The
Yeah.
brain, there's no you have to be intelligent. You have to know how to remember things. You
Mhm.
get, and that's basically what the school system is about: remembering things,
Mhm.
remember what you were taught, remember what you read. So, and I was trained to remember things for many
from the
years.
from
So
the
by the
scripture,
time, yeah, from
actually.
the scripture first. So by the time I entered secondary school, I was top of the class throughout my secondary school. First position from GS1 to
So
SS3.
it's like your secret to excellence in academics is basically
I
scripture.
believe so. I believe so, right? Because I had to think about it, like, what exactly?
Did
I
you
wasn't
do?
reading as much as others, but if I read, I'll remember what I read.
Well,
So some people will say, well, it's just follow come, but I believe when you trace it back, you can
mm-hmm,
see why. I'm the kind of person that believes there's always a why to
mm-hmm,
what's up. If you just say, well, it's just God just love this person, you never really get anything from that person. But if
mm-hmm.
you can find out how and why it's happening,
Is replicable.
yes, then
The
you can
result is, yeah.
replicate it. So I was top of the class, and it was a blessing. Part of why it was a blessing was during my time in school,
Mm-hmm.
I also inspired my fellow people in the fellowship to also do well. So there was one thing nobody could say about us, which was that these guys are just praying, 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 praying,
And you're
praying,
not
and then
doing
they are
well,
failing.
yeah.
You could not say it because we're the
That's
ones beating all the
that's
others
so
in the class.
beautiful.
So it was a blessing, and the challenge in it was that I was good at everything apart from languages. I was terrible with Nigerian languages, to be specific. I was
That means you
getting
cannot speak Edo.
no, I can't.
No.
I was getting A's in French and getting F in Igbo and
Wow.
Hausa back then. So I was not good with languages. but every other subject I
Mm-hmm.
was, acing it. So when it got to when we were about to enter senior school, where you
Mm-hmm.
now choose whether you go for art or for science, that was when the problem started,
Mm-hmm.
or the challenge, because I remember I started writing.
Yeah, and then your whole creative
Yes, so
line.
I knew my brothers, my two brothers are good at art. You
Mm-hmm.
can see I have a painter brother, is very good at drawing. My other brother, he's a science student, but he draws. I can show you one of his drawing maybe after this
Oh,
podcast.
okay.
Really good, excellent. Well, so but I was never good at drawing, so I knew that was not my place.
Mm-hmm.
But I could write. I love to write stories. I love to write poems. I had a book back then in junior class
Mm-hmm.
where I was just writing poems. I was just writing lots of poems that were just
Wow.
coming to me, writing stories, pouring my mind into the paper. So when I was about to enter, I felt I think I should read literature.
Hmm.
So I told my parents. They were obviously not excited about it. My parents are the kind of people like they won't say no, don't do it. We want you
Okay.
to be a
But
lawyer, a
body
doctor,
language.
right? Yeah, but the body language showed that. Yeah, are you sure?
Hmm.
You have a good hair though, like,
But
but you can solve maths. You are getting A. You get these things, no. So I now told even my teachers in school,
mm-hmm.
and all of them, it was what they're saying, but they're not saying is like you want to waste your brain, like
Oh.
why
Oh
will
my
you waste
god.
your brain to study arts?
Mm-hmm.
They made it look like the smart people should go for science. You can
Mm-hmm.
handle chemistry, you can handle further maths, you can handle physics. Why should you go and be doing government
I
and history?
understand.
So I think I just listened to them after everything and I went for science.
Mm-hmm.
And by the time it was time, so when it was time to choose a career path, the major challenge I had was being good at every subject.
All right.
Because during our career talks, they usually used to say, find what you're good at,
Mm-hmm.
and then you now look into that area. So if you're good in biology, you can look into medicine. If you're good in physics, you can
Mm-hmm.
look into engineering. If you're good in chemistry, you can look. I was good at all of them. I was getting A's at all of them.
And all of
And
this was aside what it is that God had said about you. This was just your
back then,
natural
yes, that's
ability.
true. But back then, I really did not know the full picture of what God had said about me.
All right.
I had it in mind, but I didn't know the clear path. Let me
Mm-hmm.
put it that way, right? So I knew that there was an aspect of me that would have to do with speaking with people, like reaching to people, communicating messages, God's message to people.
Mm-hmm.
But how it was going to happen, I didn't know. And obviously, I was not going to just enter ministry from secondary school. There was
Mm-hmm.
a path. So I needed to go to university. I had to know what I was going to do. So it was a challenge for me, and I I didn't exactly know what I wanted, but I knew what I did not want,
Which was
and I did not want medicine. At a point in my life, I thought I wanted to be a surgeon, but it was thanks to Ben Carson. You
Ben
know,
Carson did a lot
I
of
read his book Gifted Hands. I'm like, oh my god, I love to be like this
hmm.
man. And then I reached the point, like, no, I have no interest in
Hmm.
blood or hospitals or
Hmm.
anything like that. So I didn't want medicine. A lot of people, once they see you doing very well in school, they say, oh, you'll be good as a doctor.
Hmm.
So that was the question for me. I didn't want it. Um, Law was out of it since I was not a science student. Engineering, I considered it a little, but I didn't really fancy engineering as it were. So, and I was thinking of the professional courses. These are
Yeah.
basically the professional courses, and then there's architecture. So, for architecture, I liked technical drawing. I didn't love it, but I liked it.
It was something you could manage.
Yeah, and I remember speaking with Apostle back then, Apostle George, and we talked about it. Oh, I think you will do well at it, and there's something about influence when especially at
Actually.
that stage in your life. Just hearing him say, "I think you will do very well at it," made me feel okay. I think I'll actually do well at it.
Mm-hmm.
So I applied for architecture, knowing I was good at. I liked the whole idea of technical drawing, and I liked
Mm-hmm.
the idea of bringing out buildings. I liked the fact that it didn't have to do anything with medicine, all those
Mm-hmm.
bloody things and all those chemistry and all those stuff. There's really no chemistry like that in architecture. But physics, I loved physics. My dad was a physics lecturer actually before he passed on. So I don't know if it's kind of just passed on.
Mm-hmm.
I liked physics and mathematics, and I heard that these were the things in
That you
architecture
would do.
that
But
you
would you say you just managed your way through? Because I know you graduated with a very good
Uh, um,
grade.
I don't know how exactly to put it. Uh, it's neither good nor bad
It was just there.
to me. This is what I mean. I knew the kind of person I was and I am, and I finished with a 4.04 CGPA, which for me is poor
Mm-hmm.
based on my own kind of
Mm-hmm.
standard, right?
For other people, it's like,
Yes.
ah.
So I started with the first class, and by the way, that 2017 where I released my first song, I was in 200 level. It was from 200 level, my realizing my priorities began to change.
Mm.
I began to be more passionate about the music than the architecture. In 100 level, my passion was just to make the first class and finish with first class. It wasn't
Mm.
really about the architecture, it was to make a point, like
Yeah,
I
yeah.
finished with the first class. But 200 level, I started to become more deliberate about
Mm-hmm.
the music and all that. So um, I would say to be a first class student requires commitment. Let me put it that way. You have to be committed to your academics, um, especially in architecture. If I had known, because if someone asked me, would I have studied architecture? I really can't say, to be sincere, I really
Mm.
can't say because I know the opportunities are in architecture. I know it very well as an architect. And, but if it's in terms of, what I did, I probably have just found the course that requires you to read.
So I
Now,
can just
that's
pass
the,
and
yes,
focus
that's the catch
on.
in architecture. You can't just read and pass. You have to draw.
Oh wow.
And drawing takes time. I used to say that I could sit down. This was where I used to work on this, at home, or just put
Mm-hmm.
my board here and work. And I could sit on a particular assignment. We call it a module, the major work we do in a semester in design for 50 to 100 hours, and you will not finish.
50 hours to 100
Yes.
hours
It is not as a stretch, but you break it down. But for you to do it well,
for
to say
one
you didn't
module.
fail it, right? There's one module in one course out of other courses are like maybe 10 courses, 11 courses in a semester.
So my question is, for a creative, okay, say for example, you already have like a direction. Say for maybe you want to act, or but then okay, you have to go to school, you have to get a degree. What would be your advice?
It's just our society to a large extent has not reached that place.
Mm-hmm.
School was not meant to be a thing that's just to say I went to school. It
Exactly.
was supposed to be a means to an end. The end is to be able to refine your skill, your talent in that area that you have identified that you want to grow in.
Mm-hmm.
So someone who identifies that medicine, I love medicine, I would love to serve society through medicine,
Mm-hmm.
will now go through school to refine that to be able to do it. So I remember telling my mom I was still in 200 level or so,
Mm-hmm.
200, and I said if I had my way to study music in university, I'd have studied music. But she said, oh, you already studied architecture, just finish the architecture, right? Because there was no music. No, there's no music till now in Ahmadu Bello University's area. I think there are only two schools I know of that do music in Nigeria,
Nigeria,
and that's JOS,
just yeah.
and I think UI, University of
Hmm.
Ibadan, if I'm correct. And even they is not at the standard that it should be.
Mm-hmm.
When we talk of music, a school that teaches music, you're talking of Harvard, you're
Berkeley.
talking of Berkeley.
Mm.
So when you say, "Oh, I graduated from Berkeley," every
Yes, yes,
musician looks at you like,
yeah.
"Wow,
Actually,
you're a
there's this
musician,"
aura.
So our society has just not reached that point where, because even if you go to school now to study music
Mm-hmm.
in Nigeria, you're kind of cheating yourself,
I think the highest you'll be is a music teacher in a primary
right?
school or
You
something.
don't really need to study music, which was kind of the good advice my parents gave me also. That okay, you say you want to write. When I was talking about literature,
Mm-hmm.
you love to write. You can still write without reading literature, which is true.
Yeah,
You
and
can
that's
still be
some
a
of the
musician
advices
without
advice.
studying
Yeah.
music, which is true. But there are some things you cannot be without studying it, like architecture. You cannot be an architect without studying architecture. So I feel it has its place. I don't regret it because there are certain doors I've entered because I'm an architect, not because I'm
Mm-hmm.
a musician. There are certain opportunities that are available to me as an architect, not as a musician. I believe a time will come in my life where I may not have the time to combine them
The two of
together,
them, yeah.
but I'm not yet at that point in my life. So for
Hmm.
now, I can still juggle the
One
two.
is,
Yes,
would you say one
until
is feeding off the other?
both of them are. There are times where I use my music money to buy materials for architecture,
Mm-hmm.
and there are times when, you get one, we call it PP. You
Mm-hmm.
get one small job, you have me design
It's
this
a
small
wax
building,
album.
they give you,
Mm-hmm.
something, and you now put it back into it. So they both work together. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes just the name, the
Mm-hmm.
Bible says a good name is better than
Riches.
riches. It's just a Nigerian mindset. It's not an accurate mindset, but it's kind of there in Nigeria where I go to a place as a music minister, especially if you are not yet the Nathaniel Bassis and the Mercy Chinwos, they don't even know you that much.
Mm-hmm.
The respect they will give you
Mm-hmm.
is not that much, but if you mention that you're an architect, they look
Mm-hmm.
at her, oh, we can't, let's not play with him. He's
Actually.
actually, you understand? So it kind of has its place
Mm-hmm.
together. But if I had my way, like I said, in a sane society where everything was in place, I would have studied music gladly, studied it professionally, and you know, just built my life on that.
Well, that's beautiful. So I actually have a question about one of the songs you wrote, which is Spirit of Victory. Of course, thank you for sharing the story about Spirit of Victory. It's a blessing. But why did you do Spirit of Victory remake?
Okay, let me be very sincere about the
Mm-hmm.
why. Like I said, I was under mentorship back
Mm-hmm.
then, um, as informal as it was,
Mm-hmm.
because I just used to crash into his house many times and be like, Daddy, I want to talk about something.
Mm-hmm.
I'll just go. So I remember I told him I wanted to record a song, and he spoke to me, told me make sure it's excellent, make sure it's this, make sure it's
Mm-hmm.
that. So I remember when I recorded the song, I took it to his place.
Mm-hmm.
I think I took it on my laptop then because my phone did not could not really play songs or something like that. But I
Mm-hmm.
know I took it to him, and I said I would love him to listen to it. So he listened to it. That was Apostle Selman, and he's a very musically inclined
Yeah.
person. So he was once a music director at a point in his own life
Mm-hmm.
and all that. So and he said, "Well, Jeff, this is very good. It's very good for a start. You
Mm-hmm.
know, this is it's good. It's fair for a start, but and the song is powerful. The song is great. He said it will be a great song that will be sung in congregations, a cry for revival, and all of that. Yeah, but I think for now this is okay, but maybe later when you are
Mm-hmm.
more grounded, maybe you can do another version, another production because it was like the production quality
Wasn't so
is
great.
not that good. And I know he was because that's the beauty of having fathers and mentors. They are not trying to massage your ego. They'll
Mm-hmm.
tell you what they think about it. So he wasn't trying to be a fan. He was just telling me his opinion. So he said the quality of the song spiritually and even in terms of the message and all that is great, but the production can be better. That was basically what he was saying. So from that moment, I had it in my head that someday I'm going to do another version of
Mm-hmm.
this song just for a better production. That was all. It wasn't like the song is less spiritual or anything. I just wanted to have you know, a more standard production quality
Mm-hmm.
out there. So the first production it was like I said, it's quite good. I still listen to it today. I still love it. But we did it in Zaria, we did it in Pastor A's studio. You will know
Mm,
it.
yeah.
That his studio. Then
Yeah.
we just entered inside, just did it, right? So it was all fair, but now we had grown to a point where we could afford something better. So the main reason why I now went ahead to do it was because I wanted to do a video for the song.
Mm-hmm.
When I did it at first, I did not have the resources to do a video. It wasn't even on my mind, and I didn't know the song would do as well as it did. So when it
I'm
now
sure you were
began to,
shocked. Well, is it this
I
song?
was not shocked.
Okay.
I was, I don't know how to put it. Um, I was grateful. Let me put it that way. I was overwhelmed and
Okay.
grateful. I think that's the word. Not necessarily shocked, but I was overwhelmed at how it happened, and I was grateful. So when the song began to do so well, um, the need for a face behind it. A lot of
Mm.
people, even till now, know the song without knowing who sang it. And it's because, like I said, when I started, I did not know how the thing worked.
The whole
So
branding,
yeah,
all of that.
branding. When we talk branding, some people think it's an
Okay.
unspiritual thing. Don't
Actually.
just leave it. Let the song be blessing people. Let's not go into that now. So I didn't know
Maybe
how
we'll talk
any
about
of
it
those
later.
things worked then.
Mm-hmm.
So there was really no branding,
Mm-hmm.
no. So you could hear the song and have no idea who the person who sang
Yeah, and
it was.
just in line with this, one of the questions I wanted to ask is how did you deal with anxiety with sharing your music? Did you ever feel anxious at a particular point in time? Because I know as a creative, sometimes when you're not confident in the quality of your work, you're like, should I share this thing? But then you know it has a spiritual aspect, and you're like, okay, maybe the spirit will cover for it and all of that. So did you experience that, and how did you deal with it?
I
Going
did,
with this,
I
okay,
did, I did. I experienced it a lot. In fact, I still do
okay,
to an extent. I've just learned how to master it. I think the guiding principle that I learned, which I work by, is not to chase perfection, but
hmm.
to chase excellence.
What's the difference?
Perfection is the point where you can say, there's nothing I can add to this.
Okay.
It's all right. I've reached that point. I'm not hearing any issue with this
Mm-hmm.
thing again. It's just perfect.
Mm-hmm.
But excellence can be measured by standards,
All
right? So
right.
there are standards you use to measure excellence. Is this thing excellent? For instance, um, for a song,
Mm-hmm.
um, let me just briefly run through some parameters I might use to test whether a song is excellent.
Mm-hmm.
Did the singer sing well?
Mm-hmm.
Meaning, did he use the right techniques? Did he go off key? Those kind
Mm-hmm.
of things. So if he was able to maintain the key, even if he was not doing all the riffs and runs, all those things, there are many excellent songs that do not have those things.
Mm-hmm.
But the singer sang on key. The singer sang with a good tone.
Mm-hmm.
The texture is clear. The emotions that the song was supposed to communicate was communicated.
Mm-hmm.
For the music, was the production well done? The instruments, were they too loud? Were they too rowdy? Were they all of those things? Those things fall in place. Um, the diction of the singer, is he excellent? Was he pronouncing God as God, or those kind of
Mm-hmm.
stuff?
Mm-hmm.
Those are signs of excellence for me. Those are how I judge excellence. One thing with art that every artist knows is that art, there's never an end to art.
Mm-hmm.
You just need
Very
to reach
true.
a point and say, all right, this is okay. We're not adding to this. Let's leave it there.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that point, which I always strive to reach, is excellence. To now be able to gauge, like if I do a song and for any reason, I believe I've gone past that era a long time ago, but for any reason, maybe it was a live recording and I was going off key for any reason, I'm not going to put it out. It's not excellent,
Mm-hmm.
right? If I did a song and I, I was having diction issues,
Mm-hmm.
mispronouncing, mixing words up and down, I won't put it out. It's not excellent. If I did a song and the musicians were playing the wrong chords, maybe this is the chord that was supposed to be, and they're playing something else, it's not excellence. But even when we have all those things in place, trust me, you can always think of 1,001 things you want to add to that song.
Mm-hmm.
1,001 ways where you could do it differently and still arrive at So that drive to feel like you reach a point where this thing is just perfect. I cannot add anything else to it. I no longer think about that.
Well,
So once I've done the work and I reach a point where it meets the criteria for excellence, I can put it out. If it does not meet the criteria for excellence, I keep it to myself.
that's beautiful.
So that's one way. And then so that's one of the ways, one of the thoughts that guides that. But then there's also the aspect of being open to grow, right? Because even excellence, we grow in excellence.
Mm-hmm.
I usually say there's a minimum standard of excellence. So it does not mean that you meet the minimum, does not mean you can be more excellent than that. So just like that first song I released, it
Spirit of
reached the
victory.
minimum standard of excellence, but it
Mm-hmm.
was not, there was still so much more we could do, which was what Apostle Selma was telling me back then. You can still make this so much better. So for that anxiety of putting it out, there's also the aspect of where it's more of a psychological thing,
Okay.
where um, you are afraid about the response you think it will receive. Will people love this? Will people resonate with it? Will they understand where I was coming from and all that? For those things, you just close your eye and put it out.
Mm-hmm.
That's really it. I feel every creative has those struggles where you do a piece of because your that piece of work is almost like your child. It's called your
Yeah.
brainchild. And because every time you put something out there, I said it to someone recently, when you put something out in public, you open it to public criticism.
Mm-hmm.
So anybody can stand up and say this song is whack. This song is this guy was singing nonsense, and you can't. Everyone is entitled to their opinion.
Mm-hmm.
So the more you move in this, you just have to reach a point where if you are convinced that this is excellent, then you should rest in that your own conviction. So that if someone says
Of the
it's not
excellence.
excellent, you should know that's taste. It's not
Oh,
principle. There's a difference
wow.
between taste and
That's
principle.
so beautiful.
For
I'd never
instance,
actually seen it like that.
um, I remember back then, Apostle Selma would tell me he does not like mangoes
Mm-hmm.
and he doesn't eat goat meat. These are two things I love.
Mm-hmm.
Like I love mangoes. Mangoes are really nice, and goat meat is heavenly. Like it's sweet, right? So, but he doesn't like it. So if you give him goat meat, he will say no. If you give him mangoes, I'm not interested. Does not mean it's not good. So that's how some songs are, right? So I'm open to understand that people have tastes, people have preferences. So if someone says I don't like that song, I say it's your taste because I'm convinced that it is excellent. If there's a mango that you bring, everybody will agree that this mango is sour.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about taste now; it's about the principle of that mango is wrong.
Yeah.
But there's that one that you bring that is sweet, is ripe, and yet someone says I don't like this. So that's taste,
Mm.
right? So when as a creative, your assignment is to make sure your art is up to that level of excellence.
Mm-hmm.
And once it's at that level, you must guard your heart against opinions. You must be able to differentiate between the opinion and the founding principle. If
Mm.
someone is talking about the principle, for instance, if I'm saying this song that they sang, the guys were going off key,
That's
that's a
principle.
principle. It's not.
Yeah.
I'm not just saying I don't like the song. I'm saying the excellence principle is being violated. If I say, oh, this song that was sung is not in line with the scripture, especially if it's a gospel song, is violating scripture. I'm not attacking the song. I'm attacking a principle,
Principle.
which is that balance of making sure our songs are scripturally accurate. So that's that aspect.
Mm.
But I've not fully answered the one of why did I make the remake. I just wanted to say, like I said, initially I had it in mind, like I said, that I was going to now do another version, a more excellent version than the first one. But I was waiting for a call or a need for it. And 2021, I released my first album, so I wanted to make a video for the song. And since Apostle Sam already told me to, think of doing a more excellent version, so I decided to um, record a another version for the video. So if you notice, the official video of the song
Mm-hmm.
is with the new version of the song.
Mm.
Even on YouTube, it's not showing remake; it's just Spirit of Victory video, right? It's just for the sake of difference, which now I know better. Now, if I was releasing it again, I will not add any remake to it. Spirit of Victory, Spirit of Victory. Let them go and listen to all of them like that. It's the same song, right? But then I just know because it was on the same album. So there was Spirit of Victory and then there was Spirit of Victory. So I didn't want to
Remake.
look like the two Spirit of Victory inside this album. So I put the remake, which is the same thing as the remix, there. So it was for the sake of the video that we wanted to do that we um recorded another version of it,
Mm.
primarily because of the video.
That's beautiful. Talking about principle, talking about excellence. I know you're putting something together. I think it's a podcast, right? Walk us through it. What's that about? I think you also mentioned something about a class. I might be mixing it up, but just you know.
Okay, yes, there are two things which I've started a little, but I intend to build more in the coming weeks and months and even years. I intend to
Mm-hmm.
just keep doing that because, like I said, I'm passionate about teaching, um, and speaking and sharing, which I haven't done so much. I haven't projected it so much in my media space. I've been projecting more of the music for the last 5 years, 5, 6 years or so. But now I believe this is the season for me to begin to do more of that also. So for the class, I started the class last year. It was the
Okay.
first time I started the class on the industry. There's a difference between the ministry and the industries.
Mm.
It's quite interesting, but I'm quite clear about the two, the difference between the two. For the class has to do with the industry. The industry is the business. the
of making
mechanics
music.
behind the music, and it's very important.
Even as a gospel
Even as a
minister.
gospel minister,
Yeah.
we have to understand how the business works. When we say business, people always, a lot of Christians try to make it look like keep business away from, but they're
Like
all
you're being
together.
vain.
The Bible says, mind your business. Literally, it's in
Mm.
the Bible. Paul said it's
Yeah.
strive to live a quiet life and to mind your own business.
Yeah.
Paul said he minded his business, as a tent
Mm-hmm.
maker and all of that. So, um, for you to succeed in business, you must understand the principles of business. And there's what is called music business.
Mm-hmm.
A worship leader is fully in ministry, not necessarily in business. But an artist is in the business.
Even though he creates gospel music.
Who is that?
No, I'm saying an artist, even though he
Yes,
creates gospel
yes.
music.
Even though he creates, it's just like those who print books.
Mm-hmm.
There's an industry, the print industry and all that. So they need to understand those things, how to interact with editors, publishers, and all of those
Mm-hmm.
things. So, but a lot of gospel artists, I noticed, especially in Nigeria, do not have this knowledge, this understanding of the industry. So we know how to speak in tongues, we know how to talk about spiritual things,
Mm-hmm.
we know how to say, let your songs be this, let your song be
Open
that. But
dimensions
when you talk
and
about, and it's just interesting. People think it's just upcoming in terms of those who are really,
mm-hmm.
but I've interacted with artists who had hit songs.
Mm-hmm.
Just last 2 weeks, I interacted with one. One of his songs has been doing well for about 5 years. It became a normal song that people use in praise worship
Mm-hmm.
sessions. And I just thought to ask him, like, how far? I saw it on his status, so I went to check it on Apple Music to see if I noticed it was not there. And I was like, bro, how far? Is your song on DSPs? That's what I said. DSPs means digital streaming platforms. And
Mm-hmm.
he was like, sorry, he doesn't know what that means. And this is an artist who has been in the game, in
Mm.
quote, for about 7 years now. Six. He released his song before I did. I released my own.
Mm-hmm.
He released it in 2016, and then it went viral. So I'm just saying that it's not about people. Some people think, okay, I don't have a hit song. Yeah, that's why I don't really know how to do these things. People have had hit songs and they missed out on it. And what they don't understand is you need the money to sponsor the gospel.
Mm.
Artists should know that more than anybody, because you don't go to the studio and tell the producer,
I
I want to
beg.
produce a song for the kingdom, so you produce for me for free. Even the Christian producers will look at you like, get out
I
of
get.
my studio, right? Because you have to pay for it. And a lot of time it costs a lot of money, especially if you are gifted and graced to do a lot.
Mm.
People like us, we know that God has given us a lot of songs. So if it's just one song I'm doing in a year, it's affordable. But when you're doing three, four, five, six, seven,
Mm-hmm.
8 songs, albums, you have to find a way to make the business work. Every reasonable business should be able to at least sponsor itself.
Itself.
Even if it's not
Beautiful.
sponsoring your own lifestyle yet, at
Mm-hmm.
least let it sponsor itself. So the business aspect, the industry aspect of the
Mm-hmm.
music is something we need to understand, and that's what the idea of my classes are for, my master classes. I did one. I did the first one in January. Quite a number, about 30 something people were part of it. Learned a lot. I've begun to see some of them begin to distribute their songs, monetize their content, begin to have their things on digital
Is it
platforms and
still
all that.
available? Like, can people still join the
Yes, I'm
class?
going to. I've not made the announcement yet, but I believe in April.
Okay.
April, at most May, but by April, I'm targeting April. I'll have the second edition of it, and then after April, it's going to be available. Once anyone wants to, I'll just have it as a course online. People
Wow.
can just
Take the
purchase it
course.
and
That's beautiful.
learn from it. So that's for the industry aspect. Now the podcast is where I'll be teaching ministry,
Oh.
because there are two, like I said, there are two things. When we talk ministry, I'm not going to be talking about DSPs,
Mm.
royalties, blah blah blah. Right, that's industry talk. But even in the ministry, there are still so many things that people don't understand.
Mm.
There are many things we've accepted as norms, which are really not norms. There are many things we even say normally that we don't even understand. You hear people say things like the psalmist, the minstrel, the
Mm.
this one, and like, okay, what's the meaning?
What's the
Then they're like,
difference?
I really don't really know. I really
Mm-hmm.
don't know the meaning, right? You hear people say, when you're doing praise, don't do this. Then when it's time for worship, and I'm like, okay, so what's the difference
Between
between the
praise and
praise or the
worship,
worship?
yes.
And they can't tell you for most of them. As a music director back then, I saw a lot of interesting things. You give someone the mic and say, "Can you lead us in a praise worship session?" I say, "Okay, I'll start with worship. Yeah, I'll go to praise." I say, "Okay," and then the
Mm.
person starts saying, "You are good and your mercy is forever." forever. And then they finish and say, okay, now we'll go to praise. You are good and your mercy is forever. And I'm like, okay, so what exactly is the difference
Oh my
between
god,
the
that
two?
was a good
Right.
one.
So I've seen it. So it's just there's so much misunderstanding, lack of understanding, even in the ministry aspect
Mm-hmm.
also. So I don't claim to know everything,
Mm-hmm.
but I've learned. Like I said, I went on a journey to really learn. I think it was the inquisitive aspect of me, that aspect that loves to teach, that made sure that I don't just do what I'm doing for the sake of doing it.
Mm-hmm.
I had to ask questions. I questioned a lot of things. I learned a lot of things. And so that's what I intend to share in the podcast series that I'll be starting.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much. This is my last question.
Okay.
If you're not doing music, what do you think you'll be doing?
I would be a writer and a
Okay.
public speaker. I'll share my thoughts basically. Um, it's kind of what has always been on my heart, and I'm still going to be it.
Mm-hmm.
Back then, when I had the conversation with Apostle Salman in terms of career choice, and
Mm-hmm.
he asked me, okay, so what do you think you want to do? I can still remember what I told him.
Mm-hmm.
I mentioned that I want to have something that has to do with, I want to do something that has to do with dealing with people, speaking with people and influencing them,
Mm-hmm.
basically. And then he now said, everything people do has to do with dealing with people. I remember what he said.
Wow.
Right. So, but this is what I actually had in mind. I didn't know how
Mm-hmm.
to communicate it then. Um, to be able to teach people, it's part of why I thought at a point in my life I was going to be a lecturer.
Mm-hmm.
Um, to just because I just love to teach people. So if I was not doing music, I would have probably been doing something like that. I might have been a lecturer somewhere. I just had some sort of platform, whether it's through books, through whatever, just teaching people, training people,
Mm-hmm.
and it's something I love to do.
That's beautiful. So, with all this experience, all this knowledge you've acquired, what advice would you give your younger self?
My younger self, make the most of the time.
Okay.
Um, don't don't hesitate to do what you know needs to be done.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Just to be sincere, my younger self tried to, because as I'm saying these things, there are things that I kind of have known for
Mm-hmm.
quite a while. It's kind of what informed my actions,
Mm-hmm.
right? A lot of my actions. So, but that first part of make the most of the time, yeah, because I when I think of how much I've done within the past 6 years that I started as an artist, um, I'm very conscious because I know myself more than anyone else,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm very conscious of the fact that there's been a lot of time I've wasted doing things that I necessarily we're
You
not
know how
really
to.
adding to the vision and the work. So I've been just doing quite some days. You just wake up and let the day pass
Mm.
without necessarily doing something. So if I was to advise my younger self on that, I would say make the most of the time. Make sure every day you're doing something that counts, something that adds up to the vision, even if it's not throughout the day. But if at the end of the day you can't say this is what I did to move me closer to the kind of person I want to become, then
Mm-hmm.
that day was wasted. Right? And life is made up of moments and days. We don't see that. We see life like it's gonna be one big thing at the end, but
Mm-hmm.
this is literally life. And if we waste our days, we're wasting our life. So to make more use of the time, to read more, study more. I did a lot of research and reading, but at a point I was for about 2, 3, 4 years, I wasn't reading as much as I used to. So I've told the guy, hey, make sure you don't leave that part. Keep reading, keep studying, and just trust God. Everything is going to fall in place in time.
Mm,
Time.
that's so beautiful. This has been a wholesome conversation. You know, when you serve food and there's rice, there's vegetable, there's meat, it's just so beautiful. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Where can listeners find you?
Okay, you can find me everywhere you find people who do music. Right. If you're looking for my songs, like I said, they're on all major platforms.
Mhm.
Spotify, Apple Music, AudioMac. These are everywhere. Plus, if you're the kind of person who loves to still download music into your phone, you just search on Google, you will find some of my music there, even if
That
it's not
was
all
a
of
stray
them.
bullet.
But it's true. There are
Oh
some
my
people who
god.
still prefer that. They say I want to
Mm.
download it.
Do you still do CDs? All these CDs.
I did see this for my first album, but I don't think I'll do that again. Right? Yeah, I kind of just did it for I don't know the sake of it. Plus, my church um has a lot of older
Mm.
people there, so they will ask you, "Where's your CD? Where's your CD?" But that's their generation.
Yeah, I get.
Our generation are really not into CDs,
Mm-hmm.
so I did it once, but I don't think I'll be doing that again.
No.
So that's for my music. For
Mm-hmm.
my thoughts, I'm on social media, Facebook page Jephthah Idahosa Aigbe. Same thing, Instagram. I share more of my thoughts on Facebook though,
Mm.
but I plan to do more of that on Instagram
Instagram. Are you
also.
on Twitter?
I'm on Twitter, very inactive on Twitter,
Okay.
but I'm on Twitter. And for the podcast, it's going to be on YouTube, my YouTube channel, and Spotify.
That's so beautiful. Thank you so much. Do you mind signing out on the podcast?
Sure. Um, this is Jephthah Idahosa Aigbe, and I've just shared a million and one
A
words
million
on the
and one.
podcast with Mo. God bless you.
Thank you so much. Bye, guys. See you in the next episode.